One of the very consistent things about the criminals in the U.S. government is they deride the idea that children can be manipulated. And so it's very interesting that the very same people, like Mothers of Liberty, who come swinging to protect children, are also the ones who depredate on the idea of children by blaming them when they are tortured or used for trafficking. It's very consistent. The technique of the union has been to talk around me as though they're not talking to me because they have communicated that until I take responsibility for what they did to me, they will not acknowledge me as a person. And they have a huge amount of status hanging on it. They have the Beatles, for example. The Beatles were in a position to challenge the AIDS attack. Well, it's obvious that they're not going to challenge something that they authored. And even though they were very slippery in pulling Lennon's Houdini, it doesn't erase the fact that Gail Burstyn's image of a Grangan direction appears on the cover of Under Heavy Manners, God Save the Queen. So they're licentiously bragging about their two faces in the matter. America has that tendency too. They say they're protecting children by torturing children, mutilating them, and then forcing them to take responsibility for what the adults did to them. And they call that Vietnam warrior patriotism. Well, it sounds good to them. And so, they expect to get away with it. What was done to me was about as legal as the rape scene in Deliverance. The person says, just can hardly believe that they got away with it, that it's possible, that it's humanly conceivable, that something as depraved and evil as what Yoko Ono and her son did could possibly even exist, much less make it openly past the law enforcement radar. Well, they have the answers to that. They whip up something in the Ukraine and say it's normal. It's normal there. Why should you be special? You think you're special, is what the black people say. Yeah, so they meant nothing when they stopped lynching. So they meant nothing by it. They only wanted to stop lynching against black people, man. That's all. Well, there's a difference between what you can do and what you can't do. A person can't be expected to voluntarily give up their life's work in an act of slavery. That a person cannot be expected to do. These murderers with their spinny beanies expect that. But what you can do is when there's a problem, alert the public. If you trace my record, you'll see that I began talking about the suspiciousness of this crime in the early 80s. And they moved fast and furious. The Colin Powell people, the NAACP. Duvall himself said, I know Bush started AIDS and I support him for it. That should have been on the front page of Obama's claim to legitimacy as a candidate for presidency. Make absolutely sure everybody knows where these black people are coming from. What they did to me was as illegal as the rape scene in Deliverance, and yet it was put together for the same prurient purposes, to entertain by Hollywood, and they got away with it. Law enforcement is certainly to blame. The Bar Association is certainly to blame. My family is certainly to blame. And administration of the schools is certainly to blame. I can't see how anybody in their right mind could stand there and promote the idea that it is a legitimate thing to do to torture somebody, poison them in the mouth, and threaten them with AIDS after they've been molested and battered and subject to neurological experimentation to the point where they even ended up with Parkinson's, beginning in childhood. Jay Inslee must be criminally insane. Now, the way that RFK sort of angles in as though encouraging me is derisive of the lack of remorse. That nobody in their right mind would be. incapable of remorse and understanding the circumstances and details and realities of what I was subjected to. Nobody in their right mind. You think I'm some kind of deviant for supporting myself? Just because the Beatles are criminally insane doesn't mean that I am. Just because Joe Biden doesn't have a conscience doesn't mean that I don't. Just because my family doesn't have any courage doesn't mean that I don't. Just because the Black Panthers are into pussy ball doesn't mean that I am. None of the things that they say in justification hold up. There's a tantrum by spoiled children over some sort of promissory note that they were given by the criminally insane of raping an old man of his life's work and dignity. I don't understand it, and I'm not going to try. If there are certain things you can do, and one of them is try to warn, which I tried to do back in the 80s. You can't expect a person who's worked hard all their life to give up what they've worked hard for. That's just criminally insane. The people I'm dealing with are criminally insane. The Bar Association, Governor Inslee, the administration of the schools, they're all criminally insane. They use gaslighting from the recovery program. It's criminally insane. Seattle as a city and administration is criminally insane. It's not that it is criminally insane, it is criminally insane. And I advise people to stay away from them. They're criminally insane.